I also like too how within the story, there is a point where, Tio Julio kind of reflects and opens up to Selena, and it like tells a story about a formative story of his and a couple formative stories, but uh, that kind of showed how he's kind of been on a trajectory of like being closed off from the world, and how, sometimes and often living in kind of like a closeted way, like sets people on a path that maybe at the time they think is like safety, but like upon looking back can kind of see that, oh, like maybe there is like something that I missed out on by not maybe finding my community where I do
Yeah,
belong, or demanding my place in the community where I am. That's another kind of like alternative. Um, but and then also the kind of reflection, but also strength that he gets from Selena in like taking a step outside of that comfort zone that he's been in for so long. And
yeah,
then also finding like that, sometimes when you do step out, there is goodness that can come in, and like kind of trusting that, but doing so with the right supportive community is really important.
yeah. And I hope that the people that read this book find their own community, because sometimes, we don't have supportive families, but we have found families of friends and people that we can rely on and depend on. And so I hope that this book tells people to reach out, regardless if it's for mental health issues or for sexuality or identity crises or whatever. Like, it's important to reach out for your community wherever that may be.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, Tio Julio kind of represents in a lot of ways that community that is supportive of growth, of individual growth.
Yeah,
Um, like Selena has a few characters in her life who, like her mom, has a vision for her who she should be.
yeah,
Her dad also comes in with kind of like a vision for who she should be.
yeah,
Tio Julio tells her who she needs to be if she's gonna be around him, but within that takes the time to help her kind of explore herself and um, find who she is becoming in a lot of
yeah.
ways. I don't know.
And he kind of lets her be who she is. Like, he may not always agree with it, but he allows it to happen. And I feel like that's so important and critical for young people growing up, to have that space be given to them to be like, okay, you're gonna mess up, but I'm gonna let you mess up and you're safe because I got you, type of thing.
Yeah, yeah, and it goes to show too how Selena shows like him a way forward too, but like it kind of like challenges him to kind of almost rethink how he's been living. And then with her, like she comes in, but she also like is able to identify and like call out like how his behavior is shaped even by his own anxiety, and
Yeah,
how that is like cross generational. And like I think that moment, um where like Tio Julio kind of explains why he wasn't like talking in the car when he originally picked her up,
yeah,
because he was so anxious. He wanted to get to the house in one piece, basically.
yeah,
Um, as children, as like teenagers, I think to have that skill to reflect on the behavior of adults and um, identify where maybe behaviors are coming from or rooting from is a skill that like all teenagers should learn, all
It
adults should
is.
learn.
It is.
Um, and it's not in a lot of books. And I think that's like a hidden, that's like a missing piece in a lot of like the curriculum of the past, you know? Like it was
Yeah.
always like I take everything at like face value and like that person's evil or that person's great. But no, like these are complex people and a lot sometimes their behaviors are based off of sometimes maybe things out of their control, maybe some things within their control if they can properly treat things, or if they have a list of kind of guides that they follow too, like Tio's rules. Um, but yeah, it's interesting. I love it.
Yeah, I find that with how adults are, I feel like we like to pretend that we don't have problems and like, oh, I'm perfect. I don't need to work on myself. And then when we interact with children, they're like a mirror to be like, oh no, you got your own shit that you got to work on. And I feel like what inspired that aspect of that book came from my teaching experience because I kind of thought that about myself, that I was all good. Like I had been to therapy. I was like, I'm perfect. I have no character flaws. And then finally, middle schoolers will be real honest with you and they'll point stuff out and they'll trigger you. And it kind of made me realize, oh man, I am a lot more flawed than I thought originally. But then it also made me think back to my own parents because we like to see them as perfect and not having flaws, or if they do make mistakes, like how dare they make a mistake? They're supposed to be perfect. We hold them to this high standard. And I think after going through that experience with teaching, it helped me reflect on, oh, my mom is like this because she has anxiety, or my uncle's like this because he has anxiety, or maybe this is why my dad drinks so much, And there's all these different aspects to life that become like unveiled that show you the hidden motives behind everything. And you no longer take things as face value, like, oh, he's not upset with me personally. He's not mad at me. He was just scared. And so I wanted that to be depicted in the book because I feel like that's so much more realistic than just to have good characters or bad characters, even though there is technically a villain in this book. Um, but even she, I would consider not all that bad. Um, because there are certain parts where, you know, she is charming, so she has that going for her, but not much else. Um, but you'll get to that later, I'm sure, once you read the book.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be a question in the comments for everyone. What do you think? Um, no, I like to also how the more villainous characters are kind of like villainous, like in a lot of ways, like it's like they're not just villainous, they're like corrupt, they're like money hungry, they're like connected and networked throughout different like branches of government.
Yeah, I
But
would.
it's so true, you know? Like that is criminality in 2025.
And the funny part is, I wrote this book, especially the beginning part and the end part to it, before, all this crazy stuff in the government started happening. So I don't know if I premonitioned it that, oh, this stuff's going to happen or this sentiment towards immigrants is going to resurge. But, you know, it it's wild how there's that common thread with a lot of dystopian books that, it's Big Brother's watching, it's that government that gets involved, and no one is safe unless you look like them. So, yeah.
Yeah, and also like it kind of draws a big distinction between like, you know, like the rural and urban kind of like settings and environments. Like Selena is kind of like has more of a target on her in a way, because it's such a small town
Yeah.
and everyone knows everybody and everyone's
Yeah.
tracking everybody.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, like Tio Julio too, um, but he's a farmer and that's his life. That's what he does. That's what he
Yeah.
likes. But also he's kind of afraid to kind of like be himself. So the city would kind of like be a lot to handle.
Yeah.
But also there's a big distinction between like someone like Sherry would like thrive in that rural setting and she can be as invisible as she wants to be because she could just kind of like blend in and be kind of elusive if she wants and even get away with things. And then like also kind of how they can like just blend into being
A normal
anyone,
family.
yeah, a normal family or anyone in society.
Yeah.
But also how, werewolves like heroes in the moonlight can also kind of be that neighbor that you don't know is there too, unless you open up that conversation.
Yeah.
And that's like, well, I mean, the main part of the story is like Selena with her friends, and we barely kind of scratched the surface on the friendships, but we can even look at Daisy and how Daisy approaches Selena, um, kind of outs her in a way.
Yeah.
Um, but that kind of like authenticity allows them to develop a bigger friendship, a deeper friendship, and like
Yeah.
a connection that's like supportive and never going away.
Yeah.
That's also complex and hot and cold in its own middle school friendshipy way.
Yeah. Well, I feel like sometimes our friends can see us and sometimes they see the parts that we want to hide. Um, Especially when you're young and you're developing and you don't quite know who you are as a person, and there's a lot going on with her, and there's also this element of like puberty too that happens, and I feel like werewolves are so women coded because of the full moon and like the moon cycle and periods and all that, which I kind of allude to in the book as well. Um, and I feel like there's just so many layers to the werewolf metaphor, especially in this book, because I find that what inspired me the most was when people in the 1930s and maybe even later in the timeline were like being thrown into institutions for mental health issues. And like if you had a relative with a mental health issue, you just didn't talk about it and you didn't ask questions and no one saw them ever again. And so that's kind of the vibe I was writing under with the reference to like the werewolfness and the mental health issues because, people in this story have relatives that are werewolves, but no one really likes to talk about it, except for maybe Selena's dad, who's way more open about it. He's probably the most open out of all of them. Um, but that's because he doesn't really know to have shame, whereas the other ones have shame. So I think that's also an interesting distinction between the characters.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a really stark difference between her dad's approach to being a werewolf and even just life in general
Yeah,
that I'm really interested to explore later in the series too.
yeah,
I can't wait to learn more because he really does bring about like a different way, like a completely different way of living.
Yeah.
And but he also kind of teaches Selena that, maybe that there could be a balance, right?
Yeah.
And that's always the struggle, the human struggle is like finding that balance in life.
Yeah.
And then Daisy, with Daisy's like history of her family being werewolves, um, it's interesting to see kind of like the differences in her family. Like her family also doesn't like to talk about anything, doesn't want her exposed, but wants Daisy protected.
Yeah.
It's like how much do you, and even Daisy kind of comes to this question of like, how am I supposed to be prepared for the world and the reality of it if I'm not getting all the information and all the tools I need from my
Yeah.
parents?
And so she seeks it out on her own. That's kind of her approach to life. And I feel like I can relate to Daisy's character in that way that, I was very much bubbled and sheltered as a child. And I learned about, big stuff in life through research and books and Google. And so I think there is some harm that can be done if we over shelter our children. And it's interesting, it was just banned book week this week. And I feel like if we try to shelter kids from books with important messages, we're doing a disservice to them because if they don't find it from books, they're going to find it in much worse ways. So,
Yeah, and even just the kind of, because you brought up the historical institutionalization of people, but people have also been institutionalized because they're LGBT.
exactly.
And like how there really is like a divergence between like people wanting to just live and like have write books and like not have them banned, and
Yeah,
then people wanting to drastically like just institutionalize them and make them criminals just for existing. It's like the sides aren't equal.
they're not.
And like there's a false kind of like equivalence being accepted by like a lot of people in society right now, and it's kind of like mind-boggling because that's not how like kids learn. That's not how like things like being gay happens. Like
Yeah,
you're born this way
yeah,
and you like choose to either, live a closeted life and really mess with yourself mentally, right? Because you're like punishing yourself, you're denying like your truth,
yeah,
or being yourself, but also taking a risk in doing that, taking a risk professionally. Like Tio Julio is concerned about his reputation in town and his
yeah,
ability to keep his farm.
yeah,
And he only knows a way of kind of like doing that by keeping himself from really being himself.
yeah,
But it's not easy. But I think, Selena's story gives a lot of realness, but also like a lot of, you know, I can feel outside of my own life because of what's going on in her life.
yeah. It's really easy to get sucked in and be distracted for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my favorite scenes is like um the pool party scene because it's just like it's so like, got dropped off at someone's house and they have a pool in middle school. Like, okay, pool party. Nothing else exists in the world except like that backyard.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then the world comes knocking back.
Yeah.
It's funny. So, tell us a little bit about your plans for the series and, your plans as a writer just in general.
Well, my plans for the series, I have 7 books in total planned. Um, I for sure know what's happening in the second and third book, and then beyond that, I'm gonna figure it out. The second book, which I'm working on right now, I'm halfway done, is Living La Vida Llorona, which is gonna be a ghost story. So you're gonna meet a ghost, and at first, you're not sure what to make of her, but then later on, you find out her secret identity, which is given in the title. But of course, the main character, Selena, does not know that. And she knows the legend of La Llorona, but it doesn't click exactly because when she meets the ghost for the first time, she doesn't give her the name that other people call her by. She gives her birth name. And so I made up the birth name because, of course, we don't know who La Llorona is based off of because it's a folk's tale, old wives' tale. Um, but I kind of wanted to do a spin on that story because I've always been curious about ghosts and the paranormal, which is why I'm writing a paranormal story. And then the third book is Living La Vida Bruja, and that is based more on stuff that's actually happened to me in real life when I was dabbling in witchcraft and dealing with different types of brujas, good and bad. So you'll find out more about that when it comes out. And then as for a writer, I want to write a children's book series based on my experiences in the classroom as a special ed teacher and have each book be based on a different kid and their issue or disability and kind of expand on that as a learning experience for parents and teachers, but also so kids can see themselves in books. Um, because I feel like we rarely get to see that in its full spectrum.
I think this can really be a series that will be fun and enjoyable, but also like rereadable
Yeah,
in a lot of the ways like that kids like reread a lot of different like series. And it kind of it has all the elements of like, family, friends, outside life, school life. Great job.
thank you
Great
so
job.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Great
I
job to you
know.
too, because you were my editor.
Yes. Well, I'm really excited to see how more readers enjoy it. We've seen a couple of 5-star reviews, which is fantastic. And we've had some really great reviews from people saying that it grabs them, takes them, they can't put it down. So that's fantastic. And then there are even like the book club reader's guide questions in the back too that should be really fun too. So maybe we'll put some of those kind of in the description below and maybe even in the article.
Yeah,
Yeah, people can check it out, get a little bit more of a sense of what the book's about. And then obviously everyone go buy it. Support Angelica.
support.
And we'll be posting more about her upcoming works. We'll do another interview where Angelica will maybe do a reading for us, and then we'll be following all of her events. So follow Four Elements Press on socials, follow Angelica on socials, and sign up for the newsletter on the website so that you get alerted about everything we're doing. because there's going to be a lot coming
Yes.
up.
Yes. A lot of good stuff.
Yeah. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Bye. Live and La Vida Loba, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.